I think it's about time to get started. My name is Ben Howard. I'm going to take you through a very, very brief, but hopefully almost as comprehensive as we can in 50 minutes, introduction to Project Online. So just a quick hands up, who's using Project Online or Project Server at the moment? Just clients, okay. So this session's titled Getting Started with Project Online. I'm going to do a little bit of positioning around how I start a Project Online engagement and the things that I think about, and then we'll do the briefest pieces of configuration as well, just so that you can see how easy it is to configure. And then obviously any questions, grab me. I'm around the next 2 days. I'll probably be trying to sit in the sunshine outside somewhere. Okay, so just a little bit about me. I've been doing Project Server, Project Online since 2002 when Microsoft brought out Project Server 2002. Okay, so I've kind of evolved alongside Project Server, and obviously alongside SharePoint, because Project Server 2002 integrated with something called WSS, or even TFS if you run the Team Foundation services. So that's kind of my history. The bit on there that I'm probably most proud about, of course, is like a lot of people here, I'm an MVP. So we get sort of product group and we have those sorts of discussions and those ideas about what we should do in the future. Okay, so here's the agenda. Before I start any Project Online engagement, I talk to my clients about what is your project management process. Okay, so don't just rush into Project Online without thinking about that. I want to clear up the licenses story because licenses and Microsoft confuse us all. So we'll spend some time on that. We'll then kind of get started with Project Online. In fact, getting started I'm going to do first of all. Okay, so I'm going to swap the agenda around because I'm going to build a live system, and it takes about 15 minutes for Microsoft to spin that up for us. So we'll do that first. And then I've got 3 bits of setup. Okay, sort of 3 things you must go through. And then of course we go and test it by putting a few bits of data on there. And then of course somewhere along the line you're going to want to report against that. So we'll do the briefest introduction to Power BI and how you can quickly connect that using the content pack into Project Online. Okay, so let's get started. First thing I'm going to assume you do, or you need to do, of course, is get yourself an Office 365 account and sign up for Project Online. These screenshots I took from the web last week, so they're pretty comprehensive and pretty up to date. So we sign up for this application called Project Online. What we need to do, obviously, for that is log into Office 365. Once we've signed up and we've kind of paid our money, then we need to go and create a site collection with the Project Web app, and we can assign some licenses to users. So let's go and do that. So straight into a demo. Okay, so once we're logged in, the place that we go, of course, to create a site collection is within admin. So from a waffle, we'll choose admin. And obviously all of this is held, or not necessarily obviously, because you might not know this, all of this is held as part of SharePoint. So we'll go into the SharePoint admin. And you'll see when that loads up, I've already got quite a few Project Web App instances. This is my demo login account. And so you can see already I've got some around here for Project Web App. I created one this morning just for a test for the SPC. I've got various other site collections. But what we need to do ultimately is go and create a new private site collection with Project Web App as part of that. Okay, so the Project Server instance is going to be part of that site collection. So we'll just click on there. It's going to ask me for a name.
That option there by default, or do you need to have a project online license first?
You need to have a project online license. Yeah. So I'll just call this SPC Adriatics 2016. We'll make the URL the same, SPCA 2016. We'll give it a language. For me, that's always going to be English, and because we're over in Croatia, we'll choose that time zone. The administrator will just actually be me, and we can go and search for that. And then we can click OK. And what's going to happen now is it will start to go out into the cloud and spin up new SharePoint site collection with project online as part of that. Now, typically at the top it says your site collection is being created. It can take up to 15 minutes or 15 minutes to 30 minutes, something of that order. Okay, so that's what that's going to do. We'll leave that running. You can also see recently, and most of you who play with this stuff regularly, we've got a whole host of instances we can now use. When we first had Project Online, when that was released around the 2013 timeframe, you could have 3 instances. Okay, so you could have a test, a development, and a live instance. You couldn't have a training one. And then if you spoke nicely to the products group in the US, they would up that to 7 for you. Okay, and then literally 2 weeks ago, they just said you can have, what was that, 10,000. Okay, so more than enough to meet most of our needs, I think. Okay, so that'll spin around for a little while. Whilst that's spinning round, the other thing that I would need to do is assign some licenses. So if I go back to the admin site and I just click in users, let's go and have a look at active users. So one of my colleagues, Nanad, I created him as a user on here. At the moment, I haven't given him any licenses to anything. So if we have a look at product licenses, okay, we'll say he's in the UK for argument's sake, then depending upon what SKU you end up buying from Microsoft, this can be presented in slightly different ways. But what you need to find is this set of project online licenses. So we'll discuss these later, but if I want to give Nanad access to my site, then he has to have a project online license. Okay. Now I might have to give him access to some SharePoint plans as well, so that he can get Word online and those sorts of things. And if I wanted to give him access to the rich desktop client, as in Microsoft Project, then I've got a couple of choices for that, but one of them would be giving access to Project Pro for Office 365. Okay? And of course, if I want him to have access to Power BI later on, then I would give him access to Power BI. Okay? So we could just click assign on there.
Is there an interface like light version of Project?
There is, and we'll come on to Project Lite.
So if
Yes.
I don't give him the Pro, right?
You
License?
Yeah.
He still can do some limited work online. Like Word online,
So,
there is
If
Project
we give,
Online.
if we give him the light version, that license allows you to edit your task status to say I'm this % complete on tasks. So if we just park that question for a minute, because I've got a whole section on licensing, we'll do that then. Okay, so we've assigned those licenses, so that's good. Let's just go back into our admin center. Just go into SharePoint, just make sure that little circles keeps going around. We can refresh that in about 15 minutes. Okay, still happening. Okay, so that's what I've done, created a new site collection and assigned some licenses. So I mentioned first of all that I'd never go into an engagement, a customer engagement, without talking about process, because Project Online is not about a tool set. It's about aligning a tool set to the customer's project management process. Reasons people implement Project Online are many, but it can be down to resource management, it might be governance, it could be compliance, it could be just having a centralized view of all of your projects. But you can't implement Project Server without understanding what the customer's processes around project management are. So put this slide up. This is just an exceedingly generic project management process where we start the project. So somebody says we're going to initiate something, then we go and plan it, and then we execute the project. So we do some tasks, we track some risks, issues, documents, those sorts of things. We kind of work out, are all tasks complete? If they're not, we go around the cycle until they are, and then we finish it down, we close it down. So as part of that process, there are always going to be what I call touch points, and touch points exist between the client process and Project Online. Okay, so we've got to think about what are those touch points and what are we going to use Project Online for at each particular stage in the process. Where does Project Online touch my project management process? And these are just some kind of examples of what we would do at each stage. Okay, but you definitely need to talk to your customers about process. Okay, otherwise what will happen is you'll end up putting in a wonderful tool that nobody will use. Okay, so it'll be a technical success, but it'll be a business failure. Okay, so we definitely want to have a business success as well. And as part of this, then you may end up with a phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4 deployment of your Project Online solution. Okay, so that's the generic PM process. I'm not going to touch too much on that, but I am going to talk about licenses. Okay, now Microsoft don't make this easy for us. Again, screenshot taken off the web last week with a whole host of licenses on there from Microsoft.com/project. That's pretty much where I got that from. So what have we got? Well, we're going to deal with Project Online, and so straight away we can ignore Project Standard. Okay, Project Standard is a desktop client, it's on Windows 10, allows you to save .mpp plans. It doesn't play with Project Online, so you can bin that. Project Server, we can ignore that as well, because this is Project Online. Project Server, just so you know, is functionally equivalent to what Microsoft call Project Online. Okay, so you could have, this is the on-premise version, and this is the cloud version. Okay, that's the way that works. What else is confusing around here? Well, for project managers, it tells us that we can utilize 2 client applications, if you like. So they're Project Pro for Office 365, which is a subscription service, or Microsoft Project Professional, okay, which is a perpetual license. So this one you pay $25 a month. This one you pay $1,160 and it's yours forever. Okay, so that's again, they're functionally equivalent, which is why I've drawn this red box around them. I'll talk about probably Project Pro for Office 365, but they are the same application. Okay. So that gives you an option for what the project manager can use. You don't need to use either of those. We've got Project Online license. So that's the piece that I assigned to Ninad earlier in the demo. Okay. And then we have this Project Lite license, which the gentleman in the second row, third row mentioned there, which obviously is a lot cheaper. So what does Project Lite allow you to do? Well, again, we'll come on to that. But those are really our choices. Out of quite a complex slide deck, we've narrowed it down to 1, 2, and potentially a third. Yeah. So, just in case you didn't hear it, the question is, does Project Online contain the desktop application? No.
Does it get the full functionality online?
So does Project Online have the full functionality of a desktop version? No. Okay. In the same way, Word Online does not have the full functionality of Word, and similarly for PowerPoint Online.
Good analogy. Project Online is analog to server, not to desktop.
Yeah, and this is where Microsoft make it confusing. So they have a product that's called Project Online that is Project Server in the cloud, so like Exchange in the cloud. Yeah. So they have Project online, it's in the cloud, it's a what we've just created, that site collection is a project server instance in the cloud. And then they sell you a license that they also call Project Online. Yeah, but the license is different to this. The license is a piece of paper, effectively, a subscription, but the actual Project Online bit of functionality is a feature of Office 365. Okay, so they make it confusing.
I would work for a company, I would buy one project online and multiple projects below for Office 365 for clients. And they would all use the project online as collaboration.
Yes, but again, let me do the demo and let me come on to some other slides around licensing because it is confusing. So, who might use what? Okay, and that's why I put these slides together. Everybody who touches the cloud system is going to need a Project Online license, except potentially for team members, because they can use the Project Lite license. Everybody else, whether you're a project manager, whether you're using Power BI to report against the data, whether you are an executive and you're looking at all of the data, even if you're a resource manager, any of those users are all going to need a Project Online license. Okay, so that gives you the rights to connect up to the cloud and use the Project Online service in the cloud. Yeah. So what I put up there is it allows you to create simple schedules. Okay, and that's where the differentiation between the functionality between the rich client, desktop client occurs, and the web browser client. Okay. So customers ask me, what should I use? Should I use Microsoft Project or do I need Project Online to edit projects? It depends how complex your schedules are. Okay, if you have a simple 20-line schedule, then I would say this is fine. If you're getting much more complex than 20 lines, you might want to think about Microsoft, a desktop client. So Project Pro for Office 365 or Microsoft Project Professional. Okay. So that's the Project Online license. So everybody, with the exception of team members, will need one of those. Project managers then, we said, need a Project Online license for simple schedules, but they might also use one of these two products to create rich schedules. Okay? So the whole demo today will be just around the Project Online piece, but I won't be demoing Project Pro, Nenad's done that anyway. You may or may not assign or give your project managers access to Project Pro. Okay.
Everything we open is project online that would create the project professional.
Yes, everything can be opened in Project
It doesn't
Online.
work like for Word. I can create a document in Word and I cannot open it in Word Online because it's rubbish when I open it in Word Online.
Now so basically everything is stored in our SQL database in Project Online. And we have two ways of accessing that. One is via a browser and one is via Microsoft Project or some version of the desktop client. Okay? So both things can edit the data in the database. Each tool gives you different capabilities. Okay? And the desktop client obviously is much richer than the browser client. Yeah. Okay. But the data that they're editing is effectively the same. Okay. Some of the data associated with the project you'd only really edit via the browser anyway. So up here, I've said Project Online, you would use the browser to edit what we call the project detail pages, PDPs. Okay. Those are not editable in any sensible way via Microsoft Project. Okay. So Microsoft Project is a tool for scheduling. It creates a critical path analysis. It does all of that wonderful dependency network, all of that sort of stuff. Very rich, very feature rich. That's great for rich schedules. For simple schedules, you're okay just with a Project Online license using a browser to edit the plan. Okay, so that's what project managers might use. Administrators, depends what your administrators need to do. So administrators of your project web app site may need Microsoft Project or version of the desktop client. There's two reasons they need that. One is to edit the calendars. So if you're using anything other than the standard calendar, Microsoft's standard calendar is we work Monday through to Friday, 8 hours a day, 8 o'clock through till 5 o'clock or 1 o'clock, an hour for lunch. Okay, no public holidays in there. And you need the desktop client to create project templates. Okay, so plan templates. So if you're doing a rollout of Office 365 to an organization, you might want to have a template for that. Well, you need Project Pro for Office 365 in order to edit the calendars and to create the templates. Okay, so some of my customers don't have that. What they do is they phone me up and say, Ben, we need a new template. Can you put one on the system? And I say yes, and I just log in remotely and do that. Okay, so you need to think about whether your administrators need Project Pro. And for team members, this is where the Project Lite license comes in. You can get that Lite license for $7 a month. What that allows team members to do is to update the task status, edit some issues and risks, update the timesheet. That's it. Team members are not there to create new projects. They're called project managers. Yeah. So this Lite license is there because it recognizes the reduced capability that a team member would need. And also, just in terms of engagement, very rarely do I engage with the team members in the first iteration of any project. Okay, there's too much change going on in an organization if I'm getting these guys involved. And again, I end up with a technical success but a business failure because Project Online and Project Server won't be used. Okay, so here's your quick licensing review against the different audiences that you'd expect to engage with within a Project Online environment. Does that make sense, or does it start to clear those waters? Yeah? I'll take silence as yes, okay? Because I find that's the best way, otherwise if I took it as no, I'd never get anywhere. Okay, so we've discussed the initial setup of our project system, project site, SharePoint site collection with Project Online. We've discussed licenses. Let's assume we've got one up and running and think about what we need to do as a first bit of the setup. So the first thing we need to do is we need to decide fairly early on about the permission mode. Again, I'm not going to go into this in too much depth, but there's a SharePoint permission mode, which is typical SharePoint. You share things around. It's all quite open and inclusive once you've shared something, and not particularly granular. Or you can have the Project Server permission mode, which has been around since 2002. When you switch permission modes between one and another, you lose all of your previous permissions. So you don't want to get 6 months into your deployment and then say, I think I'll switch permission mode from SharePoint to Project Server, because then you've lost all of your SharePoint permissions and you need to reset everything up, or vice versa. So that's one of the first conversations I have with customers. The next thing that you need to do is you need to share the SharePoint root site. Typically, I do that with all users. They can't access it unless they've got a Project Online license, of course. Need to then think about the calendar. So if you're working a 7.5 hour day or you want to put your public holidays in there, then you're going to need to edit what's called the standard enterprise calendar. And you need Microsoft Project Professional or Project Pro for Office 365 in order to do that. So I'm not going to do that today. We would then go and edit and create some enterprise custom fields. So if you've never come across these before, these are part of the structure that you'll use for governance of your project. So if I'm in an organization, I've got 50 projects running, some of them will be in initiation, some of them will be running, some might be on hold, some could be completed. And maybe I want to group and structure those. Yeah. Some might have a risk that is red associated with them. Some of them we might say the project risk is amber. And so I want to capture this sort of data. So these enterprise custom fields, I tend to spend a lot of time going through workshops with customers and understanding how they want to categorize, group their data, which of those enterprise custom fields need to be project ones, which need to be task ones, which one needs to be resource ones, do any of them have formulas against them, all sorts of fun stuff like that. So I'm going to set up 2 of those just to show you how it's done. And the last thing I'm going to do is turn on project site creation. So when I create a Microsoft project plan up in the cloud on Project Online, one of the options I can have is an associated SharePoint site that's associated directly with that project. And that SharePoint site has a template with it, it's pre-configured so I can see issues on there and risks. I might store my documents on there, user acceptance testing criteria, deployment plans, all that sort of stuff. So it becomes a complete collaborative site for this project. Okay? So as I say, that started off with Project Server 2002 when it linked into Team Foundation Services. Okay? So that collaboration's been going on for a long time. So that's what we're going to do. So let's have a look. How's this doing? Well, hey. Great, so I've now got SPC Adriatics 2016 created. Okay, so brand new instance. So let's just click into, highlight that, and one of the things that we could do is just click into settings. So in the settings here, this is where you would change the permission mode between project server permission and SharePoint permission. Okay, and it's literally a radio button there. Okay. Slightly different on premise, you have to run a PowerShell script. Okay, but in the cloud, that's what you do. So I'm going to leave that as SharePoint permission mode. I'm not going to change that.
If we change this later on, let's say project to SharePoint, it resets all the permissions. But does it do this only on the site collection or on the whole SharePoint?
Only on that site collection. It's just on that project web app site collection. So you see, for example, these two, this is project server permissions for project web app, and then this is just the standard one. So both of these are project server instances, but this has a different permission mode to this one, just because that's why I set it up. Yeah. Okay. So here's my project web app instance. So what I'm looking at now is I'm in a browser, and effectively I'm looking at project server in the cloud. I'm looking at project online. Okay? That's the service that I'm looking at from Microsoft. Okay, so what do we say we needed to do? We needed to share this site. So this is the root site, so I'm just going to share that with everyone. This is really quick to do. So everybody can now get access to this as long as they've got a Project Online license. Okay, so that's fine. Obviously, I've got to give them the URL somewhere along the way. What else are we going to do? We'll do some things in settings. So opening up the gear wheel. Then, of course, I've got PWA settings. So these are specific settings for Project Web App, for my Project Online instance. Okay. So under PWA settings, as an administrator, I get to see all of these things. Now, we're only going to touch 3 or 4 of these. Okay. So the first thing that I said we'd do is, I think, enterprise custom fields and lookup tables. So if I click in there, Microsoft have done a job where they've created some of this for me. And again, I don't, alas, have time to go into huge depth and detail about this, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to create every project that my governance system, as far as I'm concerned, for this demo says every project needs to have a risk status against it, which is either going to be red, amber, or green. And I'm going to show that as a little icon, red, amber, or green. And I also want to capture what project phase I'm in. So am I in pipeline? Have I started the project, or is it approved? Have I started it? Have I completed it? Is it on hold? Okay, so to set that data up, I need to create a lookup table and then an enterprise custom field that goes against those lookup tables. So let me quickly do this. The first one I'll do is that red, amber, green one. So this is a very common thing, certainly in the UK. I just call this RAG, and the values are going to be red, amber, if I could spell, and green. Okay, so that gives me a lookup table. We can save that lookup table. Now, in order to associate that lookup table with a project, or with every project, I need to create an enterprise custom field at the project level. So I'll just call this one project risk. And the description, I'll say select the current risk status of the project. It's quite useful to put a descriptive field in there to tell the user what to do. It's at the project level, it's text, and I'm going to base it on a lookup table. Lookup table I'm going to use as the one that I've just created called RAG. Okay, so that works quite well. And then I'm going to display a graphical indicator against that. So I'll just say if it equals the value red, then I'll have this image. If it equals the value amber, I'll have this image, and if it equals the value green, I'll have that image. And that's all I really need to do. So I've now just created a new enterprise custom field which holds project risk and I can associate with each project. I need to do the same for the phase. So I'll create a lookup table and I'll call this phase. And I'll put in pending as the first phase, or pending, and then the next phase can be approved. The next one can be in progress. And I put numbers on these just so that it orders it correctly if I'm viewing it, grouping it in this way. Pending, approved, in progress, completed. Does anybody abandon any projects? On hold? Oh, it could be rejected, of course, yeah, if it's pending. Do you start any and then abandon them? Yeah, good, okay. Some customers don't like that term, they think it's politically sensitive. They look for different terms as opposed to abandoned. Okay, so I've got my lookup table for the phase, and again, I'm just going to associate that lookup table with a new enterprise custom field. Select the appropriate or the current phase of the project. Same thing, lookup table, phase. I won't associate a graphical indicator with it. We'll just click Save. Okay, so we've shared the root site. We've created some lookup tables. The other thing we need to do in here is turn an option on, which I like to do, that Microsoft has turned off by default, which says, when you create a project, Ben, do you want to create the associated collaborative site? Okay. Now for me, the answer is always yes. So I come in here and I just say, automatically create a site when I first publish the project, and any tasks that I've got in my project plan, I'd like you to synchronize those into the task list in the SharePoint site. Okay. Microsoft don't turn this on by default because they found 90% of customers weren't using it, or something like that. I made that statistic up, but they don't turn it on by default. All of my customers, once I tell them the benefits and help educate them, all then say, yes, I think we'd like that turned on then. Okay, so I come in here and I literally just click those two settings there. Okay, so that should be all we need to do in there. If you do need to edit your enterprise calendars, then that's the icon that you use or the link you use to edit those. And again, you have to have Project Professional, Project Office for Microsoft Office, Project Pro for Office 365 on your desktop. That's okay. So that's the first bit of the site setup. The next bit we need to do is, now we've created a couple of enterprise custom fields, we need to make sure that they're available for the project manager to complete. Okay, so just because we create them doesn't mean they're visible anywhere. Okay, so I'm going to go and create a new project detail page, or a PDP, that shows that project status, the project risk, and the project phase. Okay, those are the two fields that are going to be on that PDP. The PDP is really just a web part. So if you remember the SharePoint Digital Dashboard Resource Kit 2.0 when we started with web parts and things like that, effectively the interface looks the same. You'll all, if you're SharePoint types, you'll know about it. Also, the other thing that I always consider as I speak to my customers and say, what type of projects do you have? Are they split into different, do they follow different methodologies, or do they hold different information? Because if I'm dealing with a manufacturing company and they create new products, then a new product could be a new tin of beans, let's just say, for breakfast cereal or something like that. Or it could just be a new packaging because the EU have changed the amount of sugar we're allowed in a product. Effectively, the product's the same, it's still cornflakes, let's just say, but the packaging has changed and the materials have changed. You might end up with a variance product. You might have a product for a specific market. So I know there's products that are available in the Spa in Croatia, but I can't buy in the Spa at home. Okay. So you've got different types of project types, and we call those, or Project Online calls them enterprise project types, EPTs. So I'm going to go and create a new PDP, project detail page, and I'm then going to associate that new PDP with a new enterprise project type. So that's where I am in this screen here. So let's do that. So the first one was, the first was project detail pages. So in here, I'm just going to create a new document. And that will be my new project detail page. I'll just call it SPC 2016 details. Obviously, you'd make it something more sensible.
Can I ask you?
Yeah.
Sorry, I write you late, and but I want to know this custom field could be added on project only by administrators of the project online.
The ability to create new custom fields is an ability for administrators only. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So in the web part, I go to my project web app, category of web parts, and I look for basic info. Okay, you don't often need too much else, and we'll add it to the header, which will come in here. We'll call it basic info. And then, of course, we find these magic hidden buttons that only arrive when we mouse over web parts and we go and edit that web part. I'll give it just a new title. Basic info is a little bit basic, so we'll call it project risk and status or phase. And on this button here, modify, then I'll go and choose which of the project fields I want to display in this web part. So you can see that there's my project risk. We'll add that one in, and I should have project phase. We'll add that one in as well. Yep. Click OK. Click apply, and then hopefully you can see they begin to appear here with a couple of ellipsis buttons next to them. Yeah. So this is how I create and edit PDPs. I can do all sorts of things on here. It's all just SharePoint, so you can put images on there. You put instructions on, quite often do that. Separate things out, make it look nice again. All of those factors are available. So that's given me a new PDP. So if I then go back into PWA settings, I'm going to want a new enterprise project type. Let's just say I'm going to create a new variants project. Okay, because I'm in a product development environment. So if I click on enterprise project types, I've already got two. One is a standard SharePoint list, and one is something called enterprise project. I'll quite often just rename that to be something sensible. But to take you through the whole lot, we'll create a new enterprise project type. I'll call this new product variants. I won't worry about a description, I won't worry about any project IDs or anything at the moment. What we will do is, when we create the project, we'll ask for the basic project information, and then we'll use the SPC 2016 details page to get that other data we've just created. We'll use the project information page if we want to change anything, and we'll have a look at the schedule as well. Okay, and the schedule is where we would edit the project schedule. That's the bit that typically, historically, we'd always done in Microsoft Project, but now we can do it in the browser. Okay, so that PDP is one created from Microsoft that allows us to do that. And that's about it for now. Okay, so new product, variance product. So it's going to be a new piece of packaging or something like that. Okay, so the third bit of a setup then is to make sure we can see the data. So we've set up the back end, if you like. We've made it available to enter the data, but from a reporting perspective, from a grouping perspective, from a sorting perspective, we can't yet see that data. So in what are called the project views, the way we view the data, think of it as a SQL view on a set of tables and rows, if you like, I want to add in the project phase and the project risk, and I'm also going to add in a value called work as well, just again because it makes the BI reports look a little bit nicer. So let's go and set those up. Back in PWA settings, spent a long time in there. Quite often I put a link to it here. We've got this whole area called Manage Views. So my default view is called the Summary View. That's the one that I land on by default. So that's the one I'm going to edit. We're going to do a couple of things to that. One is I'm going to take my project risk. I'm going to add that in, and I'm also going to take the project OP, there we go, the project phase, and we'll add that in. I'm going to move the risk to the top, bubble that up so that it appears on the left hand side. I'm just going to make that 50 wide, and I'll just call it risk. So that displays that red, amber, green value for me, and then I'm going to group all of the projects by project phase. So I see the ones which are pending first of all, and then I see the ones that are in the pipeline, the ones that are approved, the ones that are completed, etc. It's just a nice way of grouping everything together. And that's all I need to do for that. I can click Save. And the other thing I want to do when I'm editing the schedule is I want to be able to add the work value in. So if I have just a look at the tasks summary view, then I'm going to go and add in work. Work is already added in. This is a change Microsoft have made recently, so that's good. Don't need to do anything on that one. Okay, so we should be about ready to test. But what have I touched? I've touched enterprise custom fields and lookup tables. I've touched connected SharePoint sites to say publish a SharePoint site on when we first publish a project or create one. I've touched project detail pages. I've touched enterprise project types. And then I've touched manage views. So out of all of this lot, which looks very complex and does different things, actually you can get something up and working fairly quickly. Okay. So that's views done. So now we test. I'm going to create 2 projects. Bear with me whilst the cloud gets its act together, and then we'll go and review how they look on the system. Okay. So back into projects. Now, because I haven't created anything yet in here, this is blank and it gives me this interface. Okay. So the only time you'll ever see get started at a project or try changing your views is the first time you come in here and you've never created anything before. So let's go and add a project. We'll do this both ways. Clicking on add a project will give me some boxes. And here's my new product variance box. So we'll say, hey, let's go and create one of those. It's going to ask me for some very, very basic info. I'm going to take 10, okay. SPC test 01. So project name, that's the only thing I'm going to take on there. It's going to process. She's right, 5 minutes. It's going to go into the cloud, it's going to create that, it's going to create the associated project site with that. I may just get away with doing one, okay? That's great. So there's the basic info. Here's the info that I want to add in, that we added in. So what's the project risk? Well, we've not started it, so let's just hope it's green at the moment. And what's the project phase? We'll just say this is approved. Okay, and then if I click on next, I can begin to edit the schedule. Okay, so this is a bit like Word Online now. This schedule piece is a bit like Project Online. Okay, so
Online waiting is the part.
Waiting is fun. Okay, we'll get there. It's never failed me yet. Okay, so here's the schedule. So let me go and create 2 new tasks. We'll call this task 1. We'll have a duration of 5 days. We'll put 40 hours worth of work in there. And we'll have task 2. We'll have duration of 5 days in there. We'll have 40 hours of work in, 40 hours of work in there. 40 plus 40 makes 80, right? 80 is the number you've got to remember. And then let's just link these two together. Again, this isn't a view on how we use project, but there that is. We can publish that out. Now, while that's publishing, one of the other things we can do is, I've got a button here called Project Site. Okay, so once this is published, if I close this, and again it says publish completed up here, I'll check it in, then I'll go and access the project site for this system. Before we do that, have a quick look here. Here's my risk, it's green. Yeah, and here's the current phase. So everything that's approved would list under here. Everything that's stage 3 completed would list under there. Everything that's on hold would list under there. So I can see all of the projects, but I can group them and sort them in the way that I want. We also very quickly should have a project site created now in the cloud. So this project site's just been created. I can customize a template, but it's been pre-configured for me with the tasks. We synchronize those up, but with issues and risks. So let me just click on risks. Let's just create a new risk. Is there a risk it's going to rain today? No, of course there isn't. Okay, but we'll assign that to me anyway. And we'll put an impact or put a cost of 50 on there and a probability of, I'd say, about 5%. Okay. And lots of other stuff. Again, I spent a long time customizing this, but I've now got one collaborative site where I store documents, issues, risks, action items, calendars, all sorts of fun things. It's SharePoint, so I synchronize it up with Outlook online for things like calendars. Got the alerts and all of that. Okay, so that's all well and good. Still with me so far? Okay, so the next bit is I've put all of this stuff on. How do I get at the data? Okay, now lots of ways, but of course Microsoft's preferred way is Power BI. Who's used Power BI? Yeah, looked at it, so there's an awareness area. So Power BI is their end user, seamless, easy to use BI application, of which they have a content pack directly for Project Online. So let's go and access Power BI. So it takes me to different browsers, so it's going to ask me to sign in. So we'll sign into Power BI. Again, this license is free. Oh, I'm already signed in. Okay, great. So let me go and get data. I'll get data from an existing content pack. Okay, here's the Project Online content pack. So we select that. We'll go and get that. So obviously you need to tell Power BI where to get the data from. Yeah, so it wants the Project Web App URL in there. Well, the Project Web App URL from memory is this one. Okay, so site / whatever your instance name is. I'll Control C on there, come over to there, Control V, click Next. And then it's going to ask us to authenticate. Anonymous access it doesn't take, of course. So we need O2Auth or OAuth2. For me, it always asks me to secondarily authenticate here. I don't know why. Then at Office 365 Apple Park on Microsoft Doc. If I had £1 for every time I had to type that in, I wouldn't be here. I'm in the Bahamas. So there's the password. That imports the data, and it's going to be this new one down here. Okay. What's the magic number you had to remember? 80. So in here, I've got lots of stuff, work, remaining work, all of that data coming down from the cloud. And as it brings it down, it shouldn't take too long. Here's the data set. Here's my 80 hours of work, of which 80 are actually remaining. And that's on my project called SPC Test 01. We could drill into that. Somewhere, I've got a risk. Here's my active risk. Okay. So these dashboards automatically will connect up, obviously, to Project Online and give you access to data. And of course, you can create and play with these and put all the slicers and filters and all of the other visualizations on there that you want. But I just wanted to show you that actually once you've got it running, it's quite easy to create and access this data. Okay, so that was a little bit on Power BI. And I'm about on time. This is what we talked about when you go and speak to customers. We always talk about project management process. Okay, nothing else works. If you haven't got that right, then forget it. And I'm doing a talk tomorrow on workflow, and that's going to be dead right for this. Licenses, hopefully we cleared up, but I can understand if we haven't. Getting started, we went and created an instance, we shared the site, we talked about SharePoint permissions, etc., etc. And then the 3 bits of setup, followed by the test, followed by the Power BI reporting. That's kind of what we've gone through. I have recorded all of this, and I will put it on my blog, which if you search for applepark.co.uk, I'll put a link to the recording once I've got it up there. Firstly, thank you, obviously, for attending. Secondly, please fill in the eval. Either take a picture of that on your fancy smartphone or just type that into a laptop, and that will get you there. And I think that's it. Thank you for your time. Are there any other questions?